With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halvorson.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning on the AgNet News Hour. Coming up later, progress on efforts to address greenhouse gas emissions. We'll have more on that, but our top story today, one expert says it's not all black and white when you analyze the current U.S. ag trade deficit. Gary Crawford has more.
U.S. agriculture is currently running a trade deficit with other countries of almost $19 billion and growing. Now, some say this reflects a weak, non-competitive U.S. ag sector. However, one expert says, hold on a minute.
To look at the trade balance and say it's negative, so we're being outcompeted, that's really oversimplifying things.
USDA economist Bart Kenner says in most cases we are importing products like fresh fruits which don't compete with U.S. products, especially in the wintertime.
Another thing to consider is a lot of imports are inputs to products that get, value added in the U.S. and then brought to market.
Bart Kenner says rising imports also show the U.S. economy is strong and that rising incomes are allowing more of us to buy more imported ag products. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Succession and farm transitions are challenging topics that take a lot of preparation. Here's Chad Smith speaking with an expert on the topics.
Tim Cobb, the owner and president of Farmland Company, says there are different types of transitions.
There's really two that are most important. That's an operational management transition as well as an ownership transition. And those items don't normally happen at the same time. When you talk about day-to-day operations as young people are coming into an organization, they should get an opportunity to manage and do a few things that will allow them to make some choices, maybe control some budgets or potentially also sell some grain and do things like that. On the other side, there's that ownership transition that might come later, but it also might include other stakeholders. And so when you're talking about succession, there are lots and lots of things to consider. And ownership transition normally takes a little bit more time.
The length of a farm transition will depend on several factors.
It really depends on the operation. It depends on the amount of communication, which is important. But really the factors that play into it can make it so a management transition can look like 3 to 5 years. And an ownership transition, honestly, depending on the equity and the amount and the size of the farms, they can take longer than that. It is not unexpected for us to see something take between 5 and 8 years. And as we watch that, it's good to have that continuity. You get the relationships with the banker. You get the relationships with the other players that are involved in this.
Conversations ahead of time are key to a smooth transition.
Communication is always the key, right? And we need to listen twice as much as we speak. I can remember early on my own family, Dad would just start talking to me about a few things, and it would be consistent. And it was always consistent. And that's important, that the message that comes from those who would like to have succession happen, that it's as consistent as possible and that it starts early, and that you include the players as often as you can.
For more information on transitioning to the next generation and finding expert help, go to asfmra.org. Chad Smith reporting.
You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. Here is Cindy Zimmerman with today's National Spotlight.
The annual American Coalition for Ethanol Conference is coming up on August 14th through the 16th in Omaha. I'm speaking with Katie Muckenhern, Vice President of Public Affairs. And Katie, give us some details on the upcoming ACE conference.
Yeah, we've hit 37 years of hosting this event for biofuel producers, farmers, and just others in the industry. And we're returning to Omaha August 14th through the 16th. We'll be at the Marriott downtown at the Capital District. And it's a 2.5-day event, and we pack a lot into our agenda, a mix of general sessions covering things like maximizing on tax credit opportunities under the Inflation Reduction Act, looking at the retail marketplace for E15 and E85, farm to biofuel carbon market collaborations. We got a trade update. And then, we have our breakout sessions take a deeper dive into, we have 3 different tracks: leadership and management, technology, and carbon topics. So our agenda is really shaping up here with just a few weeks left to go.
Well, your theme this year is the gold standard. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, so the gold standard is our theme this year, and we thought it'd be fitting coming off of the Olympics and just lots of attention on the GREET model, and that's what we refer to as the global gold standard for biofuel life cycle greenhouse gas emissions. So, with the IRA tax credit guidance being rolled out here this summer, so we thought it'd be fitting for both of those, and we like to refer to our industry as we believe, we're setting the standard for clean energy solutions. So that's why we chose the gold standard.
Is there anything different this year that people have to look forward to?
Yeah, well, a few different things coming up this year. We're launching an event app. We're using the platform Huva. So when you register, you'll get instructions on how you can download the app for our event. It's just a convenient way for attendees to access the agenda, any announcements that we may make, get more details about the speakers and tracks, and share their experience on social just through their mobile device. So really looking forward to making the event a little more accessible for people throughout the event, and an easier process for check-in as well. And then one other new thing we're bringing to our agenda this year is our second night reception we're going to have outside. So if you've been to the Marriott in Omaha, they have a nice plaza behind the hotel. And so we're offering kind of an elevated reception on that second evening to enjoy the warm summer evening in August.
As far as the ethanol industry is concerned, what do you think are going to be the main topics of discussion among the industry members that are going to be at the conference?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. And, like I mentioned with our theme, the gold standard, the GREET model and 45Z guidance that's expected to come out here this summer, maybe hopefully before our conference. That's going to be a huge topic of discussion. Like I mentioned, we have our farm to biofuel panel talking about climate smart agriculture. That's going to be, a lot of interest for attendees, I know. One of our keynote speakers, Lee Blank, the CEO of Summit Carbon Solutions, he's going to give an update on their CO2 pipeline project. So I know that's going to be one of the highlights of our agenda too. And of course, trade is always a big topic. We have Mackenzie with the U.S. Grains Council joining us to provide an update there. And we have the Pro Exporter Network. They're going to dive into sort of the feedstock picture for sustainable aviation fuel and renewable diesel based on our current policy and regulatory environment. So lots of, we shape our agenda around, the timeliest topics that we can. And so really encourage attendees to attend, because it's a sort of a pivotal point here for the industry.
Well, yeah, so the conference is coming up August 14th through the 16th, which is, as we said, right around the corner. Where can people find out more information online?
Yeah, they can visit our website, ethanol.org/events/conference. We have all the details there. Registration is open. It'll be open up until the event. And like I said, we have the event app this year, and they can check out all the different facets in the agenda. We just posted that, so they can check out the speakers, agenda, and everything from our website.
All right, thank you very much, Katie, and we will plan to be there August 14th through the 16th in Omaha for the ACE conference. I'm Cindy Zimmerman.
That's today's National Spotlight. Now here's Gary Crawford with the Livestock Report.
Yes, it's true. Over the last 20 years, we have seen a significant reduction in contamination of raw chicken and other poultry products by Salmonella bacteria. However,
we have seen no change in the amount of illness that is attributed to chicken. And that's just not right.
Not right. Dr. Emilio Esteban is Undersecretary of Agriculture for Food Safety. He says to make it right and reduce the numbers of human illnesses caused by salmonella in poultry products, the U.S. is now proposing new rules that would have poultry growers and processing plants place a lot more attention on testing for and eliminating a half dozen of the 2,700 types of salmonella that are out there.
It's not a perfect solution, but it's a huge step in the right direction to at least start to focus and those stereotypes that are really making people sick.
Dr. Esteban says out of the thousands of types of salmonella bacteria that exist, only about a half dozen of them can infest raw poultry and cause human illnesses at the same time. He says those are the types of salmonella the industry needs to concentrate on at every point along the poultry production system, from the farm to the processing plant to the consumer.
I see it as an onion with different layers, and each layer has another layer of protection.
And the layers begin at the farm level.
If you present a very nice, clean, healthy chicken to the slaughter plant, then the job is easier. If you maintain that quality within the plant, that maintains that uniformity and adds another level of protection. And then you include good consumer handling and practices for cooking. It is the responsibility of the entire chain to get to the point where we don't make people sick by eating contaminated poultry.
And Dr. Esteban says the plan for these new rules is to prevent products contaminated with these types of bacteria from ever being sold to consumers at all. And in doing so,
will reduce human illnesses by about 25%.
That's a big number. In the U.S. each year there are a reported 168,000 cases of food poisoning linked to salmonella in chicken and turkey products, most of which happen when consumers don't cook foods to the recommended temperature to kill any bacteria. Meredith Carruthers with USDA's Meat and Poultry Hotline says always use a food thermometer, and with poultry,
any chicken, whether it's whole or ground, chicken, turkey, duck, any poultry, whether it's whole or ground, you want to cook those to 165.
165 in the center of the meat. For more information, call the Meat and Poultry Hotline, 1-888-MP-HOTLINE, 1-888-MP-HOTLINE. Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson, and we will be back in just a moment with more agriculture news. Coming up in a few moments, we'll have today's This Line of Ours report, but first, more of the day's agriculture news. And with a preview of what you'll hear today on AgNet West, here's Brian German.
The California Department of Food and Agriculture has announced updates to multiple quarantines for invasive pests and diseases. The Mediterranean and Queensland fruit fly quarantines in Southern California have now ended. Director of CDFA's Plant Health and Pest Prevention Services Division, Victoria Hornbaker, said that while the threat is never completely gone, the coordinated response from residents, agricultural industry members, and agricultural commissioners has resulted in the successful eradication of the two invasive species. There is still currently an active Queensland fruit fly quarantine in the Redlands area of San Bernardino County. At the same time, CDFA is expanding the HLB quarantine boundary in the San Dimas and Montclair areas of Los Angeles County, along with the Riverside area of Riverside County. The Asian citrusillid bulk citrus regional quarantine zone 6 in Riverside is also being expanded. ICL has acquired Custom Ag Formulators for about $60 million to expand its growing solutions offerings. Custom Ag Formulators, which provides liquid adjuvants, enhanced nutrients, and other specialty products, operates two facilities in Fresno, California, and Adel, Georgia. Both sites manufacture liquid and dry formulations, and their strategic locations allow for same-day shipping to key U.S. growing regions. This acquisition, the second in 2024, aligns with ICL's strategy to grow in new markets. The company has said the latest acquisition will help meet local growers' needs and address diverse crop nutritional requirements across the country. Patrick Murray of Custom Ag Formulators emphasized their long-standing mission to deliver quality products and excellent customer service, expressing excitement about continuing this mission with ICL. The USDA's made significant progress over the past year in improving climate mitigation estimates for its conservation programs. The effort supports better measurement and monitoring of greenhouse gas emissions and carbon sequestration in climate-smart agriculture. The USDA focused on 7 key areas, collaborating with various agencies and experts to enhance the accuracy of greenhouse gas data. One key achievement is the investment of $10 million to reduce methane emissions from livestock. Additionally, USDA allocated $12 million to create the AI Institute for Climate-Land Interactions at the University of Minnesota, and also established a national network to monitor methane and nitrous oxide emissions and conducted extensive greenhouse gas measurements across various agricultural settings. The initiatives aim to provide reliable data, improve conservation strategies, and support sustainable agriculture. The U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol has expanded for the 5th consecutive year. Program manager for the Trust Protocol, Tillman White, detailed the type of growth the program has experienced.
The Trust Protocol did see a expansion both in grower enrollment and in the planted cotton acres captured in our system. The grower enrollment increased around 35% from the previous year of 2023. Alongside our grower membership, obviously the planted cotton acres enrolled, we also saw an increase of around 2.1 million acres, which was up 31% from 2023. The planting of those protocol acres for 2023 crop resulted in around 1.9 million bales that were uploaded into our system and flagged as Trust Protocol cotton out in the market. And the expanded acreage for 2024 further enhances the availability of the sustainable cotton in the market.
Registration is open for the 32nd Annual Nutrient Management Conference set to take place in October. Hosted by the California Department of Food and Agriculture's Fertilizer Research and Education Program and Western Plant Health, this year's conference will be held October 29th and 30th at the Embassy Suites by Hilton Monterey Bay in Seaside. This year's conference includes presentations on irrigation and nutrient management in annual and perennial crops, soil sampling and laboratory techniques, and nutrient management in regenerative agriculture. There will also be 2 panel discussions going over nitrogen removal coefficients and nutrient and irrigation management in organic systems. More information about the 32nd Annual Nutrient Management Conference is available on the upcoming events page at agnetwest.com. I'm Brian German for AgNet West Radio Network.
Smokey Bear through the decades. That's coming up on This Land of Ours. A new public service video salutes our nation's symbol for wildfire prevention for 80 years of service. Rod Bain has more.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know.
8 decades for the U.S. Forest Service's symbol for wildfire prevention.
But I can only teach wildfire prevention.
And 2024 signifies the 80th anniversary of Smokey Bear and his iconic message.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
A long-form social media video is now available to honor Smokey, entitled Decades. Produced by longtime collaborators, the U.S. Forest Service, National Association of State Foresters, and the Ad Council, the video also features the new voice of Smokey, actor Brian Tyree Henry. The media is among various recognitions of Smokey's 80 years of service this year. More about the history and legacy of Smokey Bear is also found online at www.smokeybear.com. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
The latest USDA cotton crop report is out. Here's Becky Summer.
Acreage updates for cotton were made in several states based on a thorough review of all available data. All cotton planted area totaled 11.2 million acres, down 4% from the previous forecast, but up 9% from 2023. Area harvested is forecast at 8.63 million acres, up 34% from 2023. All cotton production is forecast at 15.1 million 480 pound bales, up 25% from the previous year. Based on conditions as of August 1st, yields are expected to average 840 pounds per harvested acre, down 59 pounds from 2023. As of August 4th, 60% of the nation's cotton acreage had begun setting bolls, 2% ahead of last year and 1% ahead of the 5-year average. 45% of the 2024 cotton acreage was rated in good to excellent condition, 4% below the previous week, but 4% above the previous year. Cotton production in Georgia is forecast at 2.15 million bales, down 1% from last year. In Alabama, production is estimated at 725,000 bales, down 1% from 2023. Florida production is expected to total 115,000 bales, 4% above last year. This is Becky Summer with the USDA National Agricultural Statistics Service.
You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. The USDA says $145 million is available through REAP. Chad Smith has more on what the funds are for.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture is announcing $145 million in funding for 700 loan and grant awards through the Rural Energy for America program, or REAP, to help agricultural producers and rural small business owners make energy efficiency improvements and renewable energy investments to reduce energy costs, generate new income, and strengthen the resiliency of their operations. Energy technologies eligible for the loan and grant awards include wind, renewable biomass, ocean, geothermal, hydroelectric, green hydrogen, and solar. What exactly are solar energy projects? Andy Walker, a senior research fellow at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, Colorado, explains.
The scope of the REAP funding in terms of technologies is actually very broad and would include solar photovoltaics, which converts sunlight directly into electricity, or solar thermal, which can deliver heat for, say, hot water or agricultural processes. Photovoltaics are glass modules, each one producing electric current and voltage. Those are wired together in series to get a system voltage of up to 600 volts. And then those series strings are wired in parallel to produce an array of any amount of power. Batteries are included in the scope of the REAP funding. So a photovoltaic system that included batteries to store solar charge for when it's needed would also be eligible. But batteries are expensive, so a lot of times it's just the PV modules and then an inverter to convert the direct current from the PV modules into alternating current that's compatible with the utility system. And then other components might include a transformer and a production meter. But neither the photovoltaic modules or the inverter require regular maintenance in the same way other generators would, but they do require monitoring and maintenance as components might fail.
He talks about what types of locations or businesses would be best for a solar project.
The solar resource occurs every day and it kind of trickles in. So loads that are not too peaky, loads that are smooth throughout the day, have an ability to use the solar power directly versus a load that's only turned on for a couple hours a week or something like that. Loads that are constant pretty much over the daylight hours and 7 days a week are probably the best loads. Facilities where the price of energy is high, of course, have a shorter payback for solar technology. Places where the grid is sufficient to support a solar system under a net metering policy. A lot of times, if we want to produce extra power during the day to get a credit under a net metering policy, the electric service to the facility might have to be big enough. An example of that might be if there's a small power line to something like a stock well, it might be hard for that small power line to export enough solar power during the day around noon to offset 24 hours of consumption. Sufficient land area is another criteria. So a nice load that's nice and smooth throughout the day, high utility rates, sufficient electrical service, and sufficient roof or land area to locate the PV array. Those might be like the four most important things to look for.
Walker talks about how applicants can ensure their proposal is ready for REAP application reviewers.
One of the more common mistakes that we find is that the cost is underestimated, especially in rural areas. Benchmarks costs might not be accurate, so it's probably a good idea to do some investigation, to talk to some local suppliers and make sure that your cost estimate is sufficient. One of the things that's often overlooked is charges that the utility might charge to hang a new production meter there, or two-way bidirectional net meter, or they might have to upgrade the electrical service on their side, such as reconfiguring the circuit breakers to anticipate this reverse power flow from the solar system, and maybe to revise the settings on their voltage regulation system. So the utility will have some costs that might have to be incurred by the project, so it makes sense to talk to the utility about costs that they might impose as well. And then finally, don't forget about operation and maintenance in your overall financial prospectus.
Agricultural producers and rural small business owners who want to learn more about renewable energy concepts can visit the National Renewable Energy Laboratory's Energy Basics page at nrel.gov/research/learning. Anyone interested in applying for USDA's REAP funding is encouraged to contact their local USDA state energy coordinators for more information. Interested applicants can also visit rd.usda.gov. Enter Rural Energy for America or REAP in the search box. The remaining application window in 2024 ends on September 30th. Reporting for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, I'm Chad Smith.
This segment is brought to you by Live Earth Products. To get to know a little more about Live Earth Products, we're talking on the phone today with Vice President Russell Taylor. Let's talk about LEP. What are the key benefits of your products for farmers in the Western Zone?
So Live Earth Products, we mine and manufacture a ingredient called humate. Now, humate is rich in organic acids called humic acid and fulvic acid. Now, those are common components in your soil organic matter. And here in the western United States, unlike those places around the Mississippi going east, actually have very low organic matter. Now, your organic matter is key think of it as the pantry in the soil. So it's key to water retention, nutrient retention, nutrient cycling, microbial activity, those kind of things. So anything that's going to impact the increase in soil organic matter will also impact things like water holding capacity and nutrient holding capacity, which is a big deal here in the West when water is not as abundant as it is in the east side of the United States.
Now, what about nitrate? I know nitrate can be a problem in some soils. So, how do LEP products help reduce the nitrate problem on saturated soils?
So Live Earth Products is not unique in how we affect nitrogen, but any organic matter will help retain nitrogen. So typically the mechanisms that we use are blending the nitrogen with the humate. So what happens is the nitrogen will attach to the humic acid, and you will see less of the processes that degrade or volatilize nitrogen. So nitrogen will either convert to a gas, or it'll be converted by microbes into a nitrate and leach to the soil. So the longer you have that product is not being volatilized or converted, the longer opportunity for that nutrient to be used by the plant. We have university testing that has shown that when you blend these organic acids with the nutrient, you give that plant a longer opportunity to use that nutrient before it's lost, volatilized, or converted.
To get to know more about Live Earth products, you can visit them online at liveearth.com. That is spelled LIVEARTH.com. This is the AgNet News Hour, and we will be back in just a moment with more agriculture news. You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. Here's today's featured interview with Robert Gould of Ag Innovations. Let's start out with your name and your title, please.
Robert Gould, Managing Facilitator at Ag Innovations.
We are out here with Kind Snacks and learning about their almond sustainability initiative. Tell me how you are involved with that.
Well, we are running this program called the RAW Lab, the Regenerative Ag and Water Lab, which is part of California Water Action Collaborative, QUAC, as we talked about before. And our work with them is they're a key partner for us, as well as their partner, OFI, in terms of on-farm practices. So they're kind of integral to, as kind of one of our key partners with the RAW Lab, because they also focus on the southern San Joaquin, and we don't have any other partners in that area. The rest are in the northern San Joaquin. And it's a nice combo because we have got Kind and OFI, so we've got the buyer and the grower together on the same page about stacked practices, especially really important to us. So what we're excited about there is that there's multiple opportunities for us to learn together, share ideas together, and advance practices and do the research and the monitoring that actually, like through a proper trial, that actually helps us understand really what's happening, what are the additional outcomes that are being generated from these practices being stacked together. And then that'll inform kind of what's next. Sets the table for the next set of practices, the next evolution. And we've got lots of ideas about that.
So I'm very interested in, you talk about stacking different methods. What have been some of the results that have been found?
Well, so far, I mean, this is becoming increasingly common across the Central Valley in California, is that cover cropping is proving to be really valuable, especially if you're doing it in very intentional ways, recognizing that cover crops often won't last throughout the summer season, the dry season. They really are only you plant them in the fall, and maybe they'll germinate in the winter and last through the spring to sometime. Then they're often terminated. But when you're aware of that and you recognize that there's a lot of soil health benefit value, and it turns out very little impact of water in terms of water consumption. And then long term, we see that actually there could be a net positive in terms of water balance, and that as you stack practices over time, as you're adding cover crops and compost year after year, the soil health is so much greater that it can hold a lot more moisture and water over time. So actually we're seeing sort of a net improvement in water resiliency, water usage over time from using cover crops, which from some perspectives, from the short-term perspective, shows up as a negative from a water use perspective. But a lot of research has shown that's not to be the case. And what we're finding is that in different crops across different parts of the state, that if you're doing it, if you're tailoring it to what the local conditions are, the local context, it's great. Same thing with compost. We're now experimenting more. There's already been some more trials work done, but we're going to be doing a whole nother level of trials work with biochar, with annual crops, and then also with almonds, coming back to the kind example, doing this whole orchard recycling where you're taking the old orchard that's no longer productive and vital, chipping rather than burning it, which you're actually not allowed to do anymore anyway in the Central Valley. State laws are preventing that. So what we're looking to do now is chip all that material, keep it on site, but combine it with a high source of nitrogen, which is manure, dairy manure, which is a problem and a cost to many dairies. So together, that combination of high carbon, high manure really is a great kind of amendment to the soil, helps protect the soil, especially as you're planting either for another round of another orchard of almonds or pistachios or whatever you're preparing the ground for, wherever the new crop is. And you don't have to haul it off site as well, which is great. I mean, this is for the orchard itself. You got to import the manure typically. So we're going to be experimenting with that. We're also looking at maybe adding biochar as well, sort of, because what can happen is the wood chips with all that nitrogen can actually get kind of broken down very quickly. So we might be adding another source of carbon that's more durable that will kind of provide that carbon kind of backbone or structure over the long term.
Almonds have had kind of a bad rap, a hard time because of water. Yeah. So doing these projects in almonds to improve water sustainability, the benefits in that, can you tell me a little bit more about long-term benefits?
Sure. Well, there's so many benefits. One simple thing is just simply that compared to other sources of protein or fats, like you've heard this a lot, right? Around like, oh, well, it's better than beef or meat, and it is. I mean, I know for myself, I'm kind of an almond nut, so to speak. I eat it all the time, and it's much healthier as a plant-based fat and protein. So on that level, it's valuable, or it's not as bad as a lot of other sources. So it's an improvement there. Also, I think as a perennial crop in California, it's a benefit in that it's for growers, it's typically has been a high value crop, which keeps them in business and keeps them viable. So it's good for the business and for the community, sort of stabilizing that. What's also true is that as a perennial crop, you're not constantly tilling the soil. So it's sort of a no-till practice. So you're reducing the amount of nitrogen that's being released into the atmosphere, or dust, or all the other things that can be released into the atmosphere. That's another benefit of it as well. I think what we're also seeing, one of the benefits of almonds as well as other tree crops and other perennial crops, is that they actually are able to withstand flooding for extended periods of time, which in itself sounds like a problem. But if you're actually using it in the context of aquifer recharge, and there's a lot of land in production that could be serving as basically a floodplain, a temporary floodplain for years where it's wet and there's extra flood water, is to actually flood those fields, let that water percolate into the soil, and it benefits the crop itself. It doesn't damage the crop if it doesn't stay too long, which scientists now know what the kind of range is for that. And that it actually can greatly improve the ability to capture a lot of flood water, which not only recharges the aquifer, but also can help prevent flooding downstream as well.
Is there any other point that you would like to make, or anything else that you think that our listeners should know?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that, and there's a lot of promise already and a lot of results already, but there's just a million more questions. It's kind of like, the bigger you make the fire, the bigger it illuminates the darkness. There's just that much more for us to learn. But we are seeing that regenerative practices are proving to be water beneficial in California and really essential. So everything from increased efficiency and a reduced amount of water to increased resiliency. So meaning delays between the time you have to begin applying water in the dry or hot season, and then also the ability to curtail water at the end of the season too, and the growing season sooner. So that's true for hotter days, and more with increasing aridity too. So so this idea of water resiliency is really important, because what you're doing is you're improving that soil health so that it's possible. The other thing is also the ability, again, to do the kind of the recharge. We're starting to see that actually that in California, if you're thinking about regenerative agriculture, that it's not just regenerating the soil or the ability for farmers to have a viable income and the communities to stay vital as well. And also that can increase biodiversity. And we're seeing, even more specifically back to this idea of recharge, that it actually is a way to recharge aquifers in a very healthy way. And for farmers to be sort of like literally farming and harvesting water as another revenue stream or another value stream that they can take advantage of that benefits them and also the greater community, because it's that groundwater is going to be serving communities, it's going to be serving lots of farms.
Thank you once again to Robert Gould with Ag Innovations. You're listening to the AgNet News Hour. Now for more news. Want to improve your physical and mental health? Studies show that being around trees can help. Gary Crawford has more.
Green space, the final frontier of health and wellness. You think you can make a case for that being true?
Yes.
Yes, that very enthusiastic yes comes from Michelle Kondo. She is a research social scientist with the U.S. Forest Service. And Michelle, then what wild and rugged place are you stationed?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Well, I guess that could be a little wild and rugged during football season. Turns out the Forest Service has its Northern Research Field Office in Philly, helping northern cities deal with issues around urban forestry, trees, and green spaces. And Michelle studies, among other things, how people relate to trees and green spaces and how those natural resources affect our physical and mental health. First, on the physical side, researchers took a look at about 9 million people, long-term, 7 cities around the world, matching up their addresses with what kind of green spaces were nearby, and they looked at those people's birth and death records. Results were conclusive.
People live longer when they live in greener environments. With a greener neighborhood, your risk of premature mortality goes down.
Michelle and her colleagues have done some studies that give us at least a clue as to why people seem to live longer in areas with trees and greenery. Michelle says Philadelphia has a lot of vacant lots and such, which can be not only very ugly, but sometimes dangerous. So with that in mind,
we asked a set of residents to wear heart rate monitors and to walk around their neighborhood. We asked them to walk twice, both before and after some of the vacant lots had been cleaned up, and we planted some trees and grass. And we found their heart rates were significantly lower when they were in view of these greened vacant lots.
And of course, it's probably some sort of mental or emotional reaction, which brings us to another study that Michelle did.
We measured people's moods, emotions. We sort of tracked their location throughout their day, and they would receive little pop-up messages on their phones to answer our very brief survey about their mood or emotions.
And the results when people were near or around trees and such?
Positive emotions were improved and negative emotions decreased compared to, for example, if they were indoors or not somewhere near some trees.
Trees. I bet that would be true of dogs. They always feel better, I think, with a couple of trees, around for,
Right.
Yeah. But that's hopefully got nothing to do with the fact that most of us are healthier and happier when we're near or around trees and such. In fact, Michelle says we don't really know exactly why that is. Is it that trees clean the air or make summer temperatures lower, or that trees reduce stressful noise levels in urban areas? Michelle, I bet you'd be a lot happier if you could have the resources to find the answers to those questions.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot happier. Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
That's today's top agriculture news. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. Thank you for sharing your morning with us.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West online at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also find our broadcast team of Brian German and Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.